Welcome to the CleanSpark and Bitcoin video. We're now doing this on a Monday instead of Friday, just to give myself a little bit of a better work-life balance. And even better than that, I'm doing it in my pajamas today, so feel honoured. I promised I was going to do it, and I'm going to do it. Other than that, in this video, though, we'll talk about the CleanSpark and the Bitcoin daily and weekly price action. We'll talk about the options interest for CleanSpark. We don't do it for Bitcoin. We'll talk about my price targets for both of them, and we'll also touch on some CleanSpark news that's been happening lately. We will also talk about the macro updates for today and tomorrow, what data is coming out, what we need to look at. I don't talk too much about Bitcoin or crypto-related news in general on here. Mainly that's because you can find that information dime a dozen anywhere, X, YouTube. Invest Answers on YouTube gets super granular, so if you want to get some nitty-gritty charting and news on that one, he keeps eyes on big wallets and all sorts on there, so he's got more time than me. Do recommend that. Other than that, though, you can find my live portfolio over on eToro. You can find the link for that in the description down below. And let's just crack on. Okay, looking straight on to the daily CleanSpark price action. I actually really like this little confirmed breakout we've got here. I say confirmed. We had quite a decent wick down and prices kind of hesitating, but a measured move off this one does get us to this kind of peak volume level at 1619. We will hit that as resistance, but that's pretty good confluence there. I like that. Happy with that. For the most part, though, I think this historical resistance level is going to be the kind of where we chop. If we don't break to the upside now, I expect we drop down, and we have 770 as support under there as well. But these prices are actually quite insane, I think. So I'm probably going to buy a little bit more at the open today. This measured move here would be a 70% plus gain. So I think I'm going to probably buy a couple more extra percent bits and bobs for CleanSpark. And what I'll do is I'll trim out those slowly as we get up here. I think probably even take a little bit more off around the $18 and $20 levels. But this 28.50 is going to be pretty strong resistance, so I'll probably scale out quite a big chunk there with the expectation that we're going to pull back closer back down to 24. That said, it doesn't have to happen, so I want to make sure I've still got some skin in the game on that one. But if we, from today's price, put a little measurement there, that's 203% return. So it makes sense to take off a little bit of risk there. But overall, my kind of price range for this one by the end of this cycle, I mean, this is all going to depend a lot on what Bitcoin does. If we go parabolic, this will obviously go higher, as it will be a leverage play on that, probably between 2.5%, 5%, 5x even. So kind of 30 to 57 is what I'm looking at. I do have it on my chart marked out a little bit higher. 32.12, I think I've got it picked out. But, you know, as price goes on, as price moves through the next few months into the next year, we should be able to have a better guide of where price is going to end up. But for now, it's going to be pretty hard. Other than that, though, RSI is a little bit cold, so there's plenty of room for upside if we do want to have a pop. The MACDX Plus is showing the death cross is still active. It's kind of stabilized, which is nice. Institutions have come back a little bit, but retail for the most part is still dominant, even though they are washing out a little bit on that one. The indicator I like best on this one is the flow. We do have 2 golden bars on there. I talk about it quite a lot. 3 bars on that is quite bullish. It's not a good indicator to use on its own, but as something that's going to provide confluence to your thesis and line up with a couple of other indicators and price action, it's pretty good. So I'd be super happy to see a third one pop up on there. So on the weekly, we still look pretty good. We've had this 2 weeks drop and then 1 week up. I would have ideally liked to see a bullish engulfing candle, but we haven't got that. It looked like it wanted to make a push up, but kind of leveled off at close to last week's high. Not really too surprised though. Volume's kind of sliding out. Again, RSI is cold. The MACDX Plus looks a little bit better. We've got high representation for the institutional investors here and retail shrinking. The golden cross here is still active, but it is pinching together. So if we could get that to separate again, that'd be nice. But flow is looking quite negative on the weekly. One thing I did want to point out, though, I forgot to mention it when we were looking at the daily chart, is that most of my position on CleanSpark is now running on free shares. I've taken so much profit back here, back at the start, that I don't really have to worry too much about being super accurate with timing. We even had a lot of scaling in and out during this high period. So can't hate all the profits I've had, and we've managed to pretty much have a 10% free position using some of the profits we made from last year. So super bullish on that. Can't hate it. I'm willing to catch the knife a little bit because I do have some buffer. I know a lot of people don't like to consider it like that, but that's what I like to do. And again, I think we're going to scale in a little bit more and scale out a little bit sooner. Originally, if price would have kept going up, it's not necessarily good for your portfolio because it means you're not being able to capture those extra gains. Because of this size pullback and the amount of money I've already taken out, we will be able to make more money to the upside when it finally does move. So that's just how I like to think about it. I'm not really just a buy and hold kind of person. My strategy is based largely around that, but I do like to trim in and out just to de-risk and also make some extra percentages where I can. Looking at the open options interest on this one, we do have this $30 key area there. I mean, that's not happening in 4 days. I don't know what to tell you if you've picked that out, but these are probably legacy from when we were trading right up here. That would have been a reasonable assumption to get to the $30 range. So they're not going to be hitting that, but they might make something on it, but I doubt it. A week out though, the expected range move gets a little bit bigger. Let me zoom in here for a second. We do have this nice $11.50 area picked out for the strongest resistance, which would be quite nice. It takes us back to this historic gap fill, which typically that's already been voided, completed, whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't mean people won't look at those levels for a little bit of confluence. The important thing to remember about technical analysis is that it isn't really about the charts a lot of the time. It's psychology. It's what people are looking at. The more eyes that are on a certain pattern, the more respected the pattern will be. So stick with what's obvious and utilize that to your advantage. Don't wait till after. But other than that, downside resistance $9 and then $8. So like we talked about when we looked at the daily, that kind of those two red lines at the bottom, they're going to be where we're expecting to see some chop if we get it. If we do have a breakout, that 1150 is going to be a pretty decent range. We do have this smaller gap here. Price will usually want to be sucked up into that, and then we've got this gap a little bit higher. So upside potential here is looking very generous. It's just going to be a question of confirming that pattern to break out to the upside. If not, we'll have a little bit more downside, but that's just another opportunity to buy cheap shares, in my opinion. This will go up eventually. It's just going to be a little bit of patience. A lot of people will be capitulating now because we've had all this high price action, similar with Bitcoin, and then we've faded. But this is kind of back to more of the normal cycle, if there is such a thing. We don't have a lot of historic data on that, but it's always worth looking at the past to see if we can find some opportunity, and then we manage our risk accordingly, which is the important thing there. Just going to have a look a week extra out. Not too much change really. Kind of looking at the same kind of sticking areas, and then $11 is still going to be the kind of really tough level to break. So looking at options, it tells me we're probably at some point going to break to the upside and then get some resistance at 11. I don't know if that's going to be within the time frame of these options, but that does tell me that those are the levels investors and institutions are looking at, which is quite important. I don't normally take a long dated look at these ones, but I'm going to have a look at the January 2025 ones because it's coming up quite quickly, but I won't look past that just because timing wise with crypto is a bit not great. But looking at those January ones, we've got some support here at 750, which lines up with that historical kind of level. And then to the upside, we've got 10, 1250, 15, 20. So, I mean, 20 was one that we pointed out in our charts as well. And then the 30 and 25. So there's definitely a lot of upside potential and a lot of people looking at those areas. It's just going to be a question of timing and if we can capture some of that move. Remember, it's not always important to capture the entire move. You don't need to time the bottom. You don't need to time the top. What you need to do is catch a big chunk of that large move, which is mainly what we're looking to do. News-wise for CleanSpark, we're looking a little bit more bullish than the dilution rumors in the last video that I made. So we had the agreement to acquire 7 Bitcoin mining facilities. Actually pretty impressed at the speed with which they want to get these deals signed off. If we just have a quick scan down here, I think it says somewhere we expect to close on each of the sites before September 25th. That is insane. Probably because it's an all cash payment. So I think it was 27.5 million for the acquisition, which would put it around 324,000 per megawatt, which is pretty decent. That's a pretty good bargain deal to me, really. Pretty excited to see these sites loaded up with the new S21 Pros. They've been sitting idle waiting for a home, and glad to see they're going to be pushing that out quickly. So they're going to be a little bit ahead of schedule, I think. They will be expected to get to 37 exahashes before the end of 2024 now, which is incredible. Just to put that into context, Mara is currently 31.8 energized. Now, Mara's always a little bit dubious because they always have such issues keeping their rigs online. So I take their numbers with a pinch of salt on that one. But just out of curiosity, I did have a quick look through some of the other miners, and I hadn't read Iron's last monthly report, but actually it's looking pretty bullish. I'm going to have to look into possibly considering this for a larger position. The hash rate by 2025, they're looking to expand to 50, which is damn good. So I'm very excited for that. And they're actually knocking quite a lot of cost from their Bitcoin production, which is nice to see. So I'm going to have to redo some numbers on that one. I had written them off. I'd started adding to them a little bit again since, but they're looking pretty good. I might have to consider adding more to that. I think they were acquiring XP miners instead of the pros, but I think that might be based on old news. So I'm going to have to check back into that. I did see a potential deal for S21 Pro miners. So it's possible that I'm just behind a little bit on the news on that one and I'd written them off. So apologies for that. I'm going to have to look more into that one. But other than that, there was a more recent deal for CleanSpark. They energized the 50 megawatt final phase of the 150 Sandersville? Yeah, that's right. So that was an additional 3.2 exahashes there. So they're now up to 26 exahashes. Very exciting. But still sticking with that, expected to reach 37 exahashes before end of 2024. And I wouldn't be surprised to actually see that number lifted at the rate they're going, just to stay ahead of the curve on that one. Very exciting, very bullish. Let's take a look at the Bitcoin daily price action then. Still loving this chart. The measured move for this one is pretty good. We can't really place the area for that yet. We need to confirm a breakout of this pattern to be able to tell you where the chart is. If we put it roughly where I think it's going to break out, we'll probably get to the high 70s range. So that's pretty decent. I get that still well under where I think price is going to end up. I'm still sticking between 120 and 240. But there is potential for it to go higher. It depends if we get a parabolic move. There's a lot of people really stressing about the price action in Bitcoin at the moment. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. It's a little bit different to previous cycles. We had the high before the halving, which typically doesn't happen. So we had a lot of front running, and then as the months have ticked by, a lot of people have got a little bit depressed about their positions. They've probably sold out, which has allowed institutions to gobble up a bunch of it and other businesses. But for the most part, we still look really good. We're still kind of in the median of this pattern, and we're still really riding the golden Fibonacci. That golden Fibonacci has been really supportive. Every time we've gone under it, we've popped straight back over it. Last time I did a video, we talked about this historical kind of 52k level. I said if we did hit that level, we're going to whip straight back up. We didn't quite get that low, but we did whip back up pretty quickly above the Fibonacci level there as well. That happens because there's low volume here, so price tends to move very quickly around those areas. Other than that, we have an incoming golden cross, which looks like it's happened. I think it's happened. It's hard to tell on this chart, and I can't zoom in much more. But that's pretty bullish. We did have a little bit of an overbought signal there, so it's not surprising we've kind of cooled off from that bull market band there. And then on the flow, that's kind of neutral. So it's good to see price kind of back in a healthy area, even though flow is kind of flat. So overall, still bullish, still expecting good things on this one. I'm I am going to update my kind of closeout documentation for this on my website at thecraftytrader.com, mainly because it's now getting to a time where I've finalized what kind of markers I'm looking for and when I'm going to actually take profit. So we'll talk a little bit about that online on my website, and I might make a separate video about it, but I'm not sure yet. Time is tight these days. But let's move on to the weekly chart. This pattern looks even better on the weekly chart. It's getting pretty volatile on there, but if we do have a break to the downside, I'd be happy to buy more on that one. We do have this longer term pattern with the green here. We have a pretty decent measured high on that one. If I can move the chart to around 120, so that's where I picked up my 120 range on that one. That 120 kind of top is based purely on a measured move for me. But we still have my kill box here. I would expect to see some kind of moving into the final stages of the price action around about that time period. So the latest I really want to be in crypto is about the 15th of September, which is marked on there as kind of like the last time period. Peak, I would expect to be somewhere in this red zone, but that's just a best guess. The orange and red zones on here, mainly for me, are warning flags. Those are the areas where I'm going to be super sensitive to the hint of a large pullback. I'm going to want to take off risk accordingly and such. But I talk more about my full entry and exit strategy on my website, so go check that out. For the most part, though, RSI is neutral. We did have that bearish divergence, which makes sense because we ended up getting a pullback on that. And MACDX Plus is kind of holding in there, not doing too much exciting, but institutions are really strong. They're not going anywhere. They've been in there a long time. Not much has changed, and flow is kind of neutral. So still looking good on the weekly as well. Macro data coming out today. We've got the manufacturing index that has been negative for quite a while. Let me just check. It's been in negative territory since December 2023, so not expecting great things from that one. Other than that, today we've got some bill auctions, not exciting. Tomorrow we've got retail sales month over month before market. I think the market's going to want to look at that one. We've also got the red book year over year, industrial production. Again, I think we let me just check that one. I think that one's been chopping around for a while, but we talk about it all the time. Industrial and manufacturing is not really where it's at in America. It's kind of service-based is driving most of the market and the economy, but it doesn't mean it's not important. People tend to react nicely, positively, when we get good reads from manufacturing and industrial, especially with some of the woes coming. Other than that, though, we've got Fed Logan's speech. Probably won't listen to that live. It's at 3:00. Other than that, more bill auctions. So not super exciting. But I think the main thing that people are going to want to be looking at this week is the Fed interest rate decision. That's on Wednesday. We also have a lot of other central banks that are going to be making their statements and projections and all that good stuff, and some rate cuts coming. So we'll see what they're doing. That's going to shift the macro globally for a little bit, but I think the market should respond well to rate cuts. It's normally what happens is we have an initial knee-jerk reaction to the rate decisions, and then it sort of waits a little bit to see what JP's got to say about the situation. If he's a little bit upbeat, a little bit positive, then I think the market will respond pretty well to that. I would prefer 25 bips, but mainly that's just because I want the market to be calm. The economy seems pretty strong and stable at the moment. Yes, jobs are getting not great, but I think they've probably been a bit fudged, the numbers anyway, so we'll see what happens. But ideally, I've always wanted preemptive cuts, not reactive cuts, so it's going to be a bit of a tightrope. Ideally, I want the smaller cuts, but it might get to a situation where we need the bigger cuts to be able to preempt things a little bit. We will get lags at some point. These will catch up, but it's too early to tell regards to if we're going to get a recession or not. We need to see some continued decent strong numbers in the economy, and we need to see more honest jobs numbers, I think. But we go on. We trust what we can trust, and we make do. If you enjoyed my content and you enjoyed watching me do it in my pajamas, being on camera, give me a like, share my video, subscribe to my channel, and I will put my face on here more in my pajamas when I can't be bothered to get dressed. And I'll hopefully see you tomorrow.